Every Guardian ever has tried to come up with some exotic ideas. Don't lie to me. You've tried to do it as well. You've come up with an idea and said, hey, what if we had a disco ball grenade launcher that fired laser beams? Everybody's done it. Here's the cool part. Sometimes we're right. In fact, the West of Loathing exotic scout rifle that we came up with maybe 4 or 5 episodes ago, it was a 120 scout rifle. Does that sound familiar? A Tex Mechanica 120 scout rifle? So what we're planning on doing today is taking another swing at coming up with some unique and interesting and hopefully balanced exotic ideas, both from our own personal sketchbooks as we being as pseudo game designers, as well as from your ideas in the comment section down below. Welcome back, Guardians, to another TDT video. I'm your humble host, Meesum777. Like I mentioned, we're going to talk some exotic ideas. We've done this a few different times. You guys really seem to like them, and I'm a man of the people, and I will be happy to oblige. First and foremost, like I mentioned, if you are a fan of this series, if you are a fan of this channel, be sure to leave us a subscribe. It helps stave off my own personal depression issues with not getting the dopamine rush of seeing a number go up on YouTube. Secondly, of course, if you have an idea, drop it in the comment section. I try to read every single comment. You can go back and look at the other videos. I will try to like and heart almost every single comment that I see. I will read every single one. And if your idea is good enough, if yours rises above the thousands or so of others that I see, I'll feature it towards the end of the video, which you'll see here is a featured idea from another user. All right. Let's get into this here. I want to start with the weapon because the weapon has typically the highest chance of causing fires in the comment section. And what we're going to talk about first is a exotic Stasis rapid fire fusion rifle called the Cold War. The Cold War was essentially the idea of, hey, these rapid fire fusions, they really suck. I mean, they can work. It's not to say that they're completely unusable. But let's be honest, most of the time if you're taking a rapid-fire fusion rifle in, you should probably just be taking a high-impact shotgun, a Fellwinter's Lie, a Mindbender's Ambition, hell, even a slug shotgun, as that's kind of competing in the same space, and it's much faster and much more consistent. So, giving it some stasis powers could be pretty cool. Let's talk about the flavor text, though, here first. I'm going to have to give you an awful impersonation or you'll never catch this reference. By the way, there are like 6 or 7 references in this video to other stuff, whether it be media, games, books, movies, TV shows. If you can catch all of them, I'll pin your comment. And it's not a bluff. If you can catch every single one of them, I will pin your comment on this video. All right? So here's the flavor text. I'm going to have to embarrass myself. I apologize. What killed the dinosaurs? The Ice Age. I'm sorry, let's never talk about that again. Let's just keep rolling and pretend that just absolutely never happened. I apologize to my family and my friends and the people that I love dearly. The exotic intrinsic trait is called EM4 Frost. It reads, this weapon fires bolts of stasis energy that slows and freezes its targets. So essentially, the idea here is that each bolt of this fusion rifle causes 2 ticks of slow, so 2 hits of the slow, meaning that if you land 5 of them, it will freeze the target. What this does effectively is it effectively pushes out the range of this rapid-fire fusion rifle, as these don't have a lot of range, as we talked about. Shotguns would generally be better in most situations, but this pushes out the range a little bit, as well as makes it an absolutely fantastic support tool, as obviously stasis is incredibly annoying to deal with. Because this is relatively accessible stasis damage, stasis freezing, stasis slows, and for PvP this can be quite annoying, I'm thinking that the archetype will have to keep it in check, and as well as the slows that you'll get will only be for 2 seconds. So if you get hit by this thing, you'll only be kind of stuttered in place for just a bit, maybe making it easy for somebody to follow up with a second shot to freeze you in place. At that point, it's 2 special ammo. I would say that's worth it. I'd say it's pretty fair to freeze a target solid if you have to waste what is essentially an entire single scav of ammo pickup. I'd say that's pretty fair. On top of that, you're probably most likely dead anyway if all of the bolts hit you outside of extremely long ranges. I think the freeze on it would be fine as well. For PvE, this would be absolutely fantastic. The exotic trait is called Polar Pairing. Hold the reload button to switch to a single high damage projectile that deals increased damage to frozen targets. So Obviously, this weapon kind of pairs with itself, is obviously you can slow and freeze the target with the normal blast, switch it over to the icicle mode, and then deal some extra heavy chip damage. Maybe even it causes shatter. I think that would be a cool way to do it too, essentially allowing it to play a bit of a DPS role if you don't want to use it in the obvious support role that it's trying to fill, with it doing the stasis slowing and the freezing with your aspects and such. But in general, I think this weapon is pretty cool. No pun intended, I think this weapon would be balanced in PvP, interesting in PvE, and in general would just be a blast to shoot. Let me know what you think of this one, though, because I know Stasis, Bungie has talked about they want to introduce Stasis as just a general weapon damage type. When they talked about the State of Destiny address in 2021, there's been some talk about adding Stasis as a general damage archetype, so maybe this could be sort of like the first weapon that sort of ushers in. Obviously, this is an exotic one, so it does a lot of special stuff, but I don't know, let me know what you think. Next, let's talk about the Titan's exotic armor piece for this week. We're going to talk about the Wandering Knight. This is a Titan exotic gauntlet. As you can clearly see here, this thing is beefy looking. The flavor text for this reads, "Finally, from so little sleeping and so much reading, his brain dried up and he went completely out of his mind." If you catch that reference, I'll give you a cookie. This obviously is a couple different references all kind of smashed into one here, but what does it do, you ask, so patiently waiting for me to scroll to the next page in my Discord to find what I actually wrote down as notes. The exotic perk on this armor piece is called Gun Shield. Replaces your barricade with a mobile gun shield. The more final blows you secure while it's active, increases its durability. So, the first thing I want to address is, does this replace my Titan's Ramparts? Wouldn't this be just like a better version of my Titan's Ramparts? And I would say no, and here's why. Because that gun shield that comes out would not cover your entire body. It would only cover a good portion of, say, your upper torso and maybe your head. This would essentially make it to where you can tank a few extra bullets, maybe even tank a sniper rifle round when you're ADSing. Only when you're ADSing. If you're from the hip, it won't protect your head. It'll only protect around your body. So that sound fair so far? How much damage would this absorb? I'm thinking anywhere from 20 to 50 damage. Obviously, if this absorbs just even one bullet that would have killed you previously, like a sniper rifle shot that would have hit you in the head, it can be very, very strong. But obviously, you're having to give up your barricade for that, which is way stronger. It can absorb way, way, way more damage. So I think this is fair. How much durability does it get if you actually kill a target? I would say 20 to 30. So if you're going up against a bunch of adds in PvE, you can essentially start to play the main tank role for your team. You can be a mobile, sort of like shoot me first before you shoot my team, sort of main tank. The nuance of this weapon is really where it's going to be balanced, and there's a lot of it here, and I'm sure you guys could come up with some clever ways to balance this, but I think the general idea as a whole is very interesting. Let me know what you think of this one. Let me know if you think this is too strong, because I can see a few arguments if this was nuanced the wrong way. But I think Bungie's been pretty good about some of the newer exotics that they have released. So if they were to release something like this, I think they would do a pretty good job of not making that shield too big, not making that shield too tanky, and not making that shield something that is just like an automatic lock as opposed to your other stuff. In particular, I would love to see this exotic paired with something like the Sweet Business, because that's like my dream as a Titan. I don't play Titan much, but I would start playing Titan if I could put a Sweet Business with a gun shield in front. Two more exotics before we get to the featured exotic, but first we got to talk about the Hunter's Fang and Claw. This is an exotic helmet. The flavor text for this reads, "And so the young wolf approaches." This is something, as you can see, the model of this. Typically, I borrow this from just whatever I can find on Google. Something that's particularly fitting the power fantasy I'm trying to go for, but Destiny 1 actually had something like this, and I'm actually super disappointed because I probably had either forgotten about it or didn't know about it, and it does not exist in Destiny 2. And you guys have seen the channel. If you're a long-time subscriber, you know that we kind of had like this wolf pack theme that goes on. Damn, do I want this cloak right now, but that's entirely separate. What does the perk do? The helmet has the exotic perk Druidic Vow. Being in combat for an extended period grants nearby target tracking, increased movement speed, and health recovery on melee kills. So in particular, let's break this down step by step, which each of these would do here, okay? Nearby target tracking. What I'm thinking here is essentially like a shorter range true sight, like you can get on Middle Tree Night Stalker. I'm thinking just something that you can be able to kind of see what's nearby you a little bit easier. So if somebody's, say, sitting in the back with a pulse, a scout rifle, or a sniper rifle, they're safe. You're not going to be able to see where they're at. However, if you've got somebody who's kind of around a corner, and you get this to trigger, then you can be able to track them down. Now, obviously, being in a combat for an extended period of time can be somewhat tricky to proc in PvP. You would be surprised how little the Frenzy perk, which obviously this is sort of like based off of, procs in PvP. It doesn't happen that much because combat is generally very fast. It lasts maybe 10 seconds maximum, and then the fight's over. What about the rest of the perks? So, increased movement speed. I'm thinking just essentially Stompy's level of increased movement. Maybe not the jumps, but just in general your increased sprint speed. In particular, I would like to see this also increase your crouched movement speed, allowing you to kind of stalk around the map, because obviously the Druidic Vow, this is kind of supposed to be played on the Druid's ability to shapeshift. I figured that if any of the subclasses, if any of the classes were to be designed around like this kind of Druid shapeshifter, it's probably the Hunter. So anyway, just being able to move around the map smoothly and stalk up on targets, and then of course, if you get a melee kill, you get a bit of health regen back, which is nice. For PvE, I could totally see myself running this. This would be a lot of fun, as would it'd be kind of just a general passive buff. I'd be able to kind of see where targets are at, which of course isn't as useful in PvE. I'd be able to move a little bit faster, which can be pretty useful to getting myself out of sticky situations. And melee kills triggering health regen can be pretty damn nice as well. Let me know what you think of this one. Particular PvP, I know that obviously wall hacks for free can be a bit scary, but I think this is enough of a trade-off, and the range on it would be short enough that it wouldn't be completely busted. I think this would be a good way to balance it out for PvP, for Trials of Osiris, comp, etc. Because combat doesn't last that long. But let me know what you think on your end. While I was thinking on the idea of Destiny 1 stuff that I really wish I got more use out of, or at least was able to see in something like Destiny 2, I came across the Obsidian Mind. The Obsidian Mind originally was taken and essentially mushed together with the Skull of Dire Ahamkara to kind of combine the perks together, which I think is a good move. But I think there's kind of a, I think there's a spot that this could sit, and I've got a pretty cool idea for encouraging a different way of play for Voidwalkers using the Obsidian Mind. So the flavor text just ripped straight from Destiny 1 is Power from Ash. Let's talk about the perk rework. The perk on it is called Insatiable. Now, here's how this has changed. Originally, the Obsidian Mind would give you more Nova Bomb energy if you got a Nova Bomb kill. Currently, that's what Dire Ahamkara does. That's totally fine. I think that's great. But here's a slight and subtle rework, but the nuance to this is quite interesting. Ability kills grant increased super energy charge rate, specifically the charge rate, until death or your next super cast. So here's the idea. If you get a kill with any of your void abilities, whether it be your grenade ability like the overcharge or the handheld supernova, or your melee, it will continuously increase the charge rate of your super energy. Same idea as how bottom tree golden gun works, where if you get headshots, it essentially reduces the amount of time that it'll take for your next golden gun to come up. I want this to essentially stay as a passive buff until you die or until you cast your next super, which obviously after you cast your super, if it's a Nova Bomb, any kills you get with that Nova Bomb will then also trigger this perk. So it essentially encourages you to go on these really long streaks. For something like PvP, anytime we talk about things that buff supers, we have to be careful because we don't want Trials of Osiris to become super v super, like this essentially super battle. But because this requires you to actually get ability kills, which can be a bit tricky. It's not just like you shoot the target and they die. You actually have to make sure that they land in a grenade or you get them with the melee. Like there's a little bit of work you have to put into this. It'll actually give you that buff only on those specific situations, meaning that you could play around it if you are smart. In general, there's a lot of things that can do something that's kind of similar to this, but not quite as nuanced as this. I think that this would give the Nova Bomb in general a much better place in the Crucible, because as it stands right now, I would argue that Nova Bomb's being a little bit outshined by the Kamehameha, by the Attunement of Chaos, or no, it's the Attunement of Control, yeah, where you can blast somebody from clear across the map because of how often it gets its super up. I think this would be cool. Let me know what you think of this one. This one in particular, I'm quite excited to try if I were to get my hands on it, because it would encourage me to play sort of defensively, try to get these kills, and then try to hold on to them for as long as I can, try to get as many stacks as I can while I'm at it as well. I think this would encourage quite fun gameplay, essentially a kill streak system in Destiny. And now it is time for the moment you've been waiting for. The featured exotic for this episode is from user, drumroll, Zekbine2000. Now, I'll be honest, this one was not entirely his idea, but it did spark something a bit of, man, I would love to have this. And I don't even think he intentionally did it either. He offhandedly mentioned the old Destiny 1 weapon, the Dragon's Breath, and the Fighting Lion, and I said, wait a minute, what if we got a Fighting Lion style Dragon's Breath? And now, if you're not familiar with what Dragon's Breath used to do, essentially it was a rocket launcher, an exotic rocket launcher that would cover the area in napalm, but offhandedly mentioning the Dragon's Breath plus the Fighting Lion made me think, what if we, because we didn't have those, we didn't have single-shot grenade launchers back in D1, what if we had a single-shot grenade launcher, Dragon's Breath style? Ooh, ah. So, thank you so much, Zekbine2000, for the idea. Like I mentioned to everybody here, we're going to talk about it here in a second, but make sure that you are subscribed, and let me know if you got those ideas, because just like Zekbine here, you could get your idea featured. Let's talk about this weapon, because I am damn excited, too. The weapon that we're going to... I feel bad for this one here because this is both a reference to another game as well as a terrible pun. This weapon is called the Dragon. Yes, the drag gun. Yeah, I know. I'm sorry. You can throw the tomatoes later. But the flavor text for this reads, all dragons descend from Gunrax, the first Sheldrake. As you can see here, this is a single shot grenade launcher with a very small blast radius, as you can see. You might think to yourself, well, the perks better make up for this tiny ass blast radius, because currently I'm not interested in rocking a solar grenade launcher. Obviously this would be solar. A solar single shot grenade launcher with basically no blast radius, and don't worry, it absolutely does. The intrinsic trait is called Dragonfire. Explosions from this weapon sticks to surfaces and cause heavy solar burn. So essentially, when you fire this thing and it detonates, it will stick wherever it landed and burn the target, essentially cause, like, you know how the knights will throw fire out and that will stick to the ground and it'll burn targets? It essentially fires that, but in order to make this cool, because that by itself wouldn't be very cool, it's a tiny little area of explosion, it's a tiny little flame, not very interesting, not very powerful, but the trait that it comes with, as you can see here, is Cluster Bomb. That's right, I want to give a single shot grenade launcher Cluster Bomb, and I want those clusters to also spawn fire. I want to fire this SOB into a room and light absolutely everything on fire. I want to crispify any enemy that I see, and boy would it be fun. Of course it would stick to targets too, so if you're able to directly hit a target with this, and let's say 2 of the, however many does that detonate, let's just guess and say 8. Let's say that there's 8 sub-munitions that split out. 2 of the 8 were to land on the target, let's say it's in PvP, it would kill that target. In PvE, this would be a great way for you to carpet bomb an area and completely deny ads. Very similar to how the Wither Horde works, but with a little bit more nuance in that it can also stick to things and essentially take that damage with it when it dies. This would be way better for taking down shields as well, because obviously it is solar damage, which can be way more effective. It can burn through stuff. I don't know if I need to sell this anymore, but just the thought of having a cluster bomb, napalm, single shot grenade launcher, if you aren't excited by that, I don't know if I want to be friends with you anymore, honestly. Like, I can't sell this anymore than just explaining what it is. But anyway, thank you guys so much for watching this one. Like I mentioned, if you like this kind of content, first of all, be sure you're subscribed because it does help us out. Leave a comment if you have something of an idea of your own. Next time we do one of this stuff, you might get featured. And yeah, I guess that's it. Bless your faces and deuces.